back to the Construction Record Podcast. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me today I have...
I'm Stuart Lewis, President and CEO of Clever Samurai Marketing and Communications.
And you are here today to talk to us about that precise thing, marketing and communications, the construction industry, to prospective people trying to get into it. So maybe we could start with that. Where are some of the big stumbling blocks? Because construction is, it's not a secret that it's a pretty traditional, it's getting better, but it's a pretty traditional industry. And sometimes they have problems getting new people into the system. So maybe you could elaborate how you are wanting to fix that.
Well, thanks, Warren. It's obviously a big challenge, particularly when you've got career preferences from various generations that continue to change. I'm looking at some data here from a particular source where construction is ranked so low in Generation Z career preferences. So you look at the top of the list, you've got arts and entertainment, recreation, followed by technology at something like 78% and 76% respectively. And then you look down the list of construction at 16.7%. So when you think about the continual retirements in the construction space, what you have to do is you have to replace people that are working now with new people. But new people just aren't interested in the trade professions. And this isn't new information. I mean, you look in Canada particularly, the Canadian government has had a government sector council program that they ran for a number of years, many of whom were clients of ours over the years in various sectors ranging from tourism to auto manufacturing, food, whatever it might be. The government recognizes that these are challenges, and still at a macro level, there's still all kinds of gaps in terms of encouraging new people to enter these professions. And particularly, I think about for example, skilled trades, red seal trades as they're known. The number one trade in Canada that would be in that area would be electricians. And one of our clients is the Ontario Electrical League, and they're busy focused with us, helping them to a certain degree around trying to encourage apprenticeship programs, but there's still big gaps. So the answer to your question is what to do. Your question that you asked is what to do about it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really tough thing that a lot of people have been trying to figure out at a macro and a micro level for a long time. So if I were to tell you there was a quick fix, I think that wouldn't be true.
Of course not. Yeah.
Yeah. So what to do? So I guess in thinking about this conversation today, Warren, I was thinking about two things. What to do at the micro level, and then what to do at the macro level. So let's talk micro level first, perhaps. So these are companies that are looking to attract people to work for them, whether they be engineers or electricians or whoever they might be that need to work in the construction space. There's shortages right across the board. And as perhaps as aggressive as it might sound, the best way to get workers is actually to take them from somebody else. People are making choices about where they work. And they're making choices for all kinds of reasons. You look at the pandemic has really changed how people are viewing work, and just in general. You look at how millennials and Generation Z view work versus say older generations. It's just different. There's just different priorities. You look at how ethnicity, diversity plays into workforces, more so now than ever, particularly with Canada's immigration. And so if you're going to attract talent, whatever company you might be in, to come and work for you, the first thing that starts with, what is it that you're going to offer? What are you selling? What are you selling versus another company to come and work for you versus somebody else? And, a lot of people think it's about the paycheck, and as much as the paycheck is extremely important, there's no question, there are many other factors that go into play to encourage someone to choose, one company over another. So if you've got a workforce that's shrinking, and a demand that's growing, and at a micro level, you are unable to influence the size of the workforce, what are you going to do? You're going to compete for talent the same way you might compete for customers. So how do you shift a mindset from basically, you're lucky to have a job working for me, to the other way around? We're going to market to you as a potential candidate to come work for our company, and we're going to give you all the reasons why our companies might be aligned with your values and what you want to do versus where you are now. And if we can do that in a way that is compelling and different and interesting, then perhaps some of those people might consider, moving from, company A to company B. You look at job seekers, 73% of job seekers are actually passive job seekers. They're not actually out there actively looking. But if you've got something that is of interest and you interrupt them in their journey wherever that is, and encourage them to look at your company versus wherever they are now, maybe the grass is greener, maybe it isn't. But if the potential candidate, is looking for change, looking for, upward mobility, or even a change of geography, or just a change of scenery, whatever it is, there's lots of opportunities potentially to tap into what is still a very large workforce. It's just not large enough.
You mentioned people rethinking stuff during the pandemic, and how much of that is maybe to construction's advantage, because there's a lot of people who don't want to be in an office anymore. Maybe they want to be outside working. Is that something that they potentially could latch onto, or is it something that's happening already? If it is.
Yeah, I think people are looking at change in general. And so there are people who don't want to be in an office, or they want stability. So if you're working, for example, in the retail sector or the restaurant sector, and you are looking to, retool your skills and do something else, there's no question that, professional trades, you can make good money doing certain types of jobs for sure. And, certainly the job stability that's associated with that is fantastic. Here's the other thing as well. I mean, if you are interested in running your own business, let's say, for example, you want to be in the drywall trade, you obviously have to learn how to do it. But if you want to do that, or be a roofer, or whatever it is, I mean, there's certain skills you need in order to be able to do that. But the path to certain types of trades is faster than others. So, for example, to become a journeyman electrician, wonderful as a career that is, it takes a lot of time in order to get those credentials. Whereas there's other trades that are within the construction space that may take less time. Doesn't mean you aren't as competent. Obviously, you got to learn how to do those kind of things. But the ability to move from perhaps a retail type scenario to something like that, it's a lot easier to do something like that. And as you know, Warren, with using drywall as an example, I mean, drywall companies, they're in high demand, and they're looking for great workers to do the work. And if you wanted to open your own business as a drywall contractor, if you knew how to do that properly, there's certainly no shortage of opportunity to do something like that. So when I think about, the changes in how people are looking at careers, and you think about things like the gig economy and everything else, well, the best gig for some people might be their own gig, and they can do that very, very well, within the construction trade. So you don't have to work for somebody. You can be a sub for somebody, and, be busy all the time, doing whatever you want to do, and work when you want, if that's what you want, or work less, whatever you want to do.
And I know besides youth, which is kind of the biggie, obviously, just for demographic reasons, construction's always had less of a challenge now, but still a challenge with attracting women and quote unquote non-traditional, as in people who aren't white males, essentially, into the business. So what are some ways that they are, and what are some ways that they could be sort of moving towards that? I know with women specifically, a lot of women get into the trades and then they don't stay because it's just not a welcoming atmosphere. That is improving, but it's not, and there are initiatives to keep it improving, but it's not where it could be.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to sort of unpack in that. So let's just talk about just diversity in general. I remember we were working on a campaign for the railway industry, and we were working with the Assembly of First Nations and trying to encourage the First Nations communities to get involved in careers in rail. And it was very successful. Why was it successful? It was successful for, first of all, the AFN are a fantastic organization, and they know what they're doing, which makes a big difference. But one of the things that when we first started working with them, we recognized that we're not experts in First Nations, not at all. And so we brought aboard a cultural advisor to help us really understand what are the issues that need to be dealt with. Because if you look in the First Nations community, which of course has lots of complex issues, to deal with from a communications perspective, marketing in First Nations communities is very, very different than marketing sort of in what I would classify as sort of mainstream Canada. And it doesn't mean that that it's more difficult. It just means it's nuanced differences. And so if I parallel those experiences and the things that we learned through that process, which was absolutely fascinating, frankly, to how do we then parallel that back to what you're talking about, it's much the same thing. So if we're going after a group of, for example, South Asians, whether they're from India or wherever, how to market to a South Asian community is very, very different to market to what you refer to as the white male. And so where are we getting involved with cultural media? How do we have leaders in those communities that already have businesses in this space, help try and create sort of a top of the pyramid beacon to showcase how there's great careers for that particular group to do well. So a case in point, the trucking industry in Canada has a very significant Punjabi population.
Mm-hmm.
And so for various reasons. And so because other Punjabi immigrants are looking at the folks that are already in the trucking industry, and they're seeing that these people are gainfully employed, and many of these people are moving from not just one truck, but they're now owning small fleets, if not larger fleets of their own. They're seeing the opportunity there. And so it's one of those things that the blanket marketing, that scattershot approach to everything, doesn't make any sense. So if I go back again to the Assembly of First Nations, there's very, very specific recruiting around positions in rail, and understanding how to market in that community and doing things very, very specific to that community, of which it's a very large population base, yields rewards. And I think much the same thing can be done, on a macro level, by taking, various communities, and you use the example of women or certain ethnicities. You can do much the same kind of thing. I think the other thing as well is that, people relate to people who they relate to, and it's not a good or a bad, it's just an is. And so being able to position a company at the micro level and an industry at the macro level that aligns with the value set of whatever demographic you're looking to try and achieve becomes really, really important. And so if we are, for example, going after a certain type of demographic, let's say it's young women. Well, young women are not going to relate to an industry that doesn't have young women in it and doesn't see opportunity in it at all. I think about the airline industry. We've done a fair bit of work in the airline industry around talent, and there's more and more female pilots today than there were, say 20 years ago. And I'm not saying that it's an equal split, because it's not there yet, but it's changed a lot, and it still needs to continue to change. There's no question about that, but it's improved, and it's improved because there's been more and more, concentrated effort on trying to make sure that qualified people are entering that industry, and regardless of gender, if you're qualified, you're qualified. And then if you're in the industry, how do you create a fair and equitable work environment where everybody has the same kind of opportunity for advancement and roots, or whatever it might be. So I don't see construction being any different. I also think something else, and that is, as the retirement boom continues to happen, you're going to have new mentality move in and old mentality move out. That in itself, that generational shifting and view of just careers and gender within certain careers in general kind of shifts with it. And so perhaps I'm, optimistic about something that maybe is not founded in any data points, but just optimistic about where our society's moving. But I think that, as our society continues to evolve and there's more acceptance of diversity and gender differences and the like, I think that's only going to improve across just all kinds of industries, including construction.
And this leads me to my final question, which is the math says you need young people, basically. You just have to. And so they are going into schools, and they are going even younger in schools to sort of make it more appealing to go into construction. But what else can they be doing? Because there's only so much going to schools you can do. Like, do they have to meet kids on the social media they're on? Or like, does that cause ethical concerns? What do you do to reach these kids, and where do you go to do it? Especially when it's older people who don't necessarily, I'm 51, I don't understand half this stuff. So where do they go, and who do they hire to get them there, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I think at the micro level, if you're a company that's specifically looking to do something, it's a hard thing to do on your own. So at a macro level, you look at certain organizations, whether they be associations or government councils or whatever they might be, they're better equipped to do things at a macro level, but they're caught up in bureaucracy and politics and various things that kind of make it challenging. So how do you get there? What you have to get there first is just the will to actually do it, and then the next thing is, okay, how do you do that? So if you think about, different industries are using gamification, they're using outreach like right at the beginning. You talked about the ethical concerns and getting there early. This is not about ethics. About I think I want you to take a job. This is about ensuring that people have choice and understand that certain choices are really interesting. So, people today are born with a computer or a phone or whatever it is in their hands, and they're not born with a hammer in their hands. But nothing wrong with having programming that is geared to having people learn about different kinds of things that they find interesting or cool. People like to build things. I mean, that's never going to change. So how does building things become cool? Now, you can build things with your brain if you're an engineer or an architect or whatever you might be. You can build things with your brain and your hands if you're a drywaller or an electrician or whatever where that might look like. So to me, it's all about how do you integrate the kind of messaging into all kinds of media. So it's not just social media. If you think about the stereotypical product placement in movies or TV, how do you show or have roles where there's actually construction jobs happening? So the person who's the main character in the story is actually runs his own construction business or her own construction business. Like, why not, right? So I think there's lots of ways to do it, but this type of socialization did not happen overnight, nor is it going to change overnight. So it's one of those things that if the industry is going to attract people to it, at the top of the heap, what is it that's going to attract people on the whole? Well, the first is that it's interesting to people who have the mindset who want to do these kinds of things. They're mechanically oriented or whatever it might be, and they're going, this is cool, this is interesting to me, I want to build things. That's the top of the heap. And then the second thing is that how do you then showcase that can be a bona fide career or set of careers, because obviously loads and loads of trades, that people can build things in any number of ways to do that. And then thirdly, how do you make it economically viable for people to make those career choices, particularly when you've got competing career choices that sometimes can pay more money. So I think it's a whole series of things. But if I were looking at government policy, I'd be looking at things like immigration around skilled trades and credentials recognition for various kinds of things. How do we fast track or encourage people around training programs and apprenticeship programs that are subsidized or free, or what are the incentives around that kind of thing? Because there's lots of people that you see the numbers today that can't afford home ownership and things like that. And so it's one of those things that it's like, how do I do that? Well, one of the ways to do that is to make enough money. And if you can make enough money because you've got a great career, and by the way, that career is subsidized for you in whatever way to make it happen, there's certain economic drivers that'll have people choose certain paths versus others. And the more people that start choosing those paths because those drivers, and all of a sudden other people start seeing that success, would they follow that path as well? So I think there's any number of things that government policy can do, but it has to be delivered through organizations that have the I guess the means in order to be able to pull it off. You asked the question of who do they go to for these kinds of things. It depends on who is. So if you're a company that is looking to hire people and attract that talent to come work for you, companies like ours do this kind of thing every day. So you're looking at recruitment from a marketing perspective, and you're trying to put a value proposition in place that encourages potential employees to pick your company versus another. If you're looking at it at a macro level, obviously there's government policy decisions and things that need to be made, and of course there's various lobby groups and associations and folks that influence all that kind of thing. But then someone's got to be able to execute it. And I think that that collective will of industry as a whole, there's organizations that are established in order to do these kinds of things. They need to be more proactive. They need to be more aggressive. It's one thing to talk about a problem. It's another thing to actually have a solution. I look at all the data points that I've been looking at, all the time around these kind of issues. I see all kinds of stats about everything under the sun, and I don't see any plausible solutions of what to do about it. So everybody hand wrings, but nobody does anything. So it's like, well, this is not a new problem. This problem's been around for a decade or more, and it's not like it's a surprise. So as a federal government policy around immigration, particularly, I mean, I think that could be a great opportunity to try and use government policy to leverage change within not just the construction industry, but frankly other underrepresented industries.
Okay, and if some thought leader is listening to this today and wants to get a hold of you, how would they do that to avail themselves of your services?
Well, they can give me a call. They can do that. So they can call our number at it's in the Toronto area at 905-275-2220, or they can certainly email me. And I think that you probably got my email address up on your
We can put in our notes. Yep.
yeah. So they can do that way as well. And I'd be happy to chat with anybody about these kind of issues for sure.
Okay. Thanks for joining us today, Stuart.
You're welcome, Warren. Thank you.